All right, I got to give you some breaking news. Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. Wow.
Holy crap, just broke. And it's the way it's phrased is his last program was Friday, April 21st.
Wow.
So no goodbye show, no, hey, this is why this is happening. Just bye-bye.
Why do you suppose that is?
I mean, the thing that jumps to my mind is just $798 million or whatever it was on this situation with
He was the best
Dominion.
of them.
He called out Sidney Powell famously and said, "You have brought me no evidence. We keep asking you for evidence and you will not bring it."
I'm telling you, the left has their fangs in Fox News. They are just going to bleed it dry.
The speculation was that this penalty would. We talked about it. We talked about Jim Garrity's column just the other day, where he said one of the risk factors, or what do we learn from this? And one of the things that he said he thought major media companies would learn was don't put hosts on the air that you think might be risky, quote unquote. And I mean, if he wasn't right, I think he's proven right just a few days later with that one, because if this is what it looks like, it certainly seems like they're just trying to get rid of anyone who might say anything they don't like.
The big story of the day, one of the biggest, I think, in news for a long time.
Oh yeah,
Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News now. I don't know what that means. You know, we're in wild speculation territory. You know, could be that he was fired because of, they just paid out, almost $1 billion and they don't want any chance of anything. But that's suicidal. To me, this is a suicidal move for Fox.
At least that's true for me. I mean, I had not succeeded in school, to put it mildly. And I did not feel, I always felt like I was smart. Not one other person felt that way. Until I got to Heritage. I'm not sure they were super impressed, but they treated me like an adult. Because they had high intellectual standards. They were standards of honesty. And, the idea at Heritage when I worked there wasn't just that, we're fighting this war against the other side, of course. But it did not logically follow from that at Heritage that you could say whatever you wanted. Just because the other side was rotten didn't mean you could be rotten. They really hewed to the highest standards of factual accuracy, intellectual honesty. They really meant it. They did. And even if you didn't agree with them, they were very serious about it. They were intellectually serious people, every single person I worked with. The receptionist in the office at Policy Review was going to school at night to learn Russian. And then the week I started at Policy Review, the Soviet Union collapsed, which was an amazing thing. The coup against Gorbachev in the third week of August 1991 was the week I started at Heritage. And in retrospect, of course, you never appreciate the significance of things as they happen to you. You can't really know what the movie's about until it ends. But at the time, we didn't really appreciate how, well, two things. One, our entire political orientation was based on this war between the United States and the Soviet Union, this Cold War, but very much a war. And every part of our politics, as you well remember, those of you my age and older remember, every part of our politics revolved around that central conflict. That's the first lesson of history. Nothing is permanent except our own demise and God. But we didn't kind of get that. If you told me then that this week the Department of Justice would have indicted a group of people I don't agree with, by the way, on a lot of different issues, black nationalist socialists from Florida, okay, kind of not my demographic, but would have indicted them for criticizing the U.S. position, the Biden administration's position on the war in Ukraine, and charged them with felonies for which they're each facing 10 years in prison. If you told me that could happen here, I would have laughed at you. No, we have a First Amendment. That can't happen here, but it has, that and a lot of other things.
I was supposed to go on there tomorrow night, so I had been talking to the producer. Each week I go on, and I was shocked because there was no adequate explanation, and he's the lead-in. So when you have the lead-in that anchors the subsequent shows, and he's getting all of this, and his audience had gone back up, way back up, then it has to be something egregious. But so far, I mean, there's been leaks that, he said he brought Ray Epps, and he said that Ray Epps was involved. But Ray Epps said right on the air, we've got to go into the Capitol. We've got to go in the Capitol. I orchestrated. All Tucker did was quote him verbatim. And the words speak for themselves. And then these other things about the voting machines, well, we saw that Tucker was pretty critical. So they haven't, and whatever narrative that keeps coming out, there's not any substantial evidence that narrative is going to convince people. And it's kind of deja vu, because I think that, Arizona could be legitimately called or not. That's not the question. But if you're a center-right show and you're the first to call Arizona and you see these radical swings on the board, you might just want to take a deep breath and see what the consensus is before you get out ahead of the pack. So that got people angry, and then people doubled down. And I think a rule, and you know better than I do, you don't attack your base. So Tucker has become a spokesman for conservatives who feel that a lot of people are afraid to say things that they know is true, and they tune into him every night for him to be explicit and candid and take the heat for them, and then he articulates something. And it's pretty tough sometimes, but I don't think it's unfair or inaccurate. And so to silence that voice, you're going to get back to, I think they're going to have a large defection from the audience.
You can't even imagine my capacity for loquaciousness. I mean, it has no end. It's a bottomless well. If you dropped a quarter off the observation deck of the Empire State Building, how long would it take to hit the sidewalk? That was always what we talked about when we were kids. You would never hear it. In my case, I can literally go on first. So I will stop, and Kevin and I are going to have a conversation, so I think it'll be much more edifying. But I would just say two things about the present moment, because I think about them all the time. And I brood on this constantly. And then I take every afternoon, because fundamentally I'm Swedish, I take a sauna every day. As a rest, I do, I'm not kidding, every single day, never miss it. And my whole family does. It's like our one cultural contribution. Oh, we're Swedish, ooh, it's a very deep ethnicity. Oh yes, a lot of Swedish traditions. You should hear our comedy, it's hilarious. But the one thing I do is take a sauna to kind of get out of my head and get away from all this stuff, and I never can, and I just use my time in the sauna to brood more. But here are two conclusions I've come to, which I think are slightly less depressing than the most obvious, which is the country's really going at high speed in the wrong direction. Yeah, no kidding. Like in ways that are just unfathomable, and for people my father's age, for example, who's 82 and such a decent man, and I could go on forever about my dad, who I saw this morning, was just born in an orphanage called the Home for Little Wanderers in Boston, and became a success and the head of a federal agency, and served in the Marine Corps, and sort of lived the America that you imagine is possible for people who are smart and try hard and all that. For people of that age, it's too much, actually. The change is too by it. I would say two things that I think we're thinking about. The first is you look around and you see so many people break under the strain, under the downward pressure of whatever this is that we're going through. And you look with disdain and sadness as you see people become quislings, you see them revealed as cowards, you see them going along with a new thing, which is clearly a poisonous thing, a silly thing.
And sometimes that can be disturbing, but that's what wins him his loyal audience. And you saw there that he's talking in philosophical terms, historical terms. And so the way he looks at the news, it's not necessarily, if I attack this person, will somebody from the RNC call me up? Or will this person get angry and not, say something about it? He doesn't care. He's at a point in his life he doesn't care. And that's liberated him. And people sense that. So they feel that he will tell them what he feels. And what does he feel? He feels that corporate America is joined the woke, and the woke wouldn't have been successful had there not been Romney-like people or the McCain right of the Republican Party.
Yeah,
that
Romney was at the BLM protests.
Absolutely, exactly. And our Antifa, they were not willing to stand up for their generations past, the dead who created this country, the values, and the Republican traditional conservative movement wasn't doing that. And yet the people who were doing it was Donald Trump, and yet he didn't come off as a Trump megaphone. He was critical of Trump in many ways. So I don't think people could categorize him as easy as they thought. That's what drove his former neoconservative colleagues at the defunct Weekly Standard or the Bulwark. They absolutely despised him because he was liberated. He didn't react. Usually when people speak as candidly as he does, and they say something that really hits home, then they backtrack or they tweet, "I didn't mean it," or "I was misquoted," but he doesn't.
Saying things they don't believe because they want to keep their jobs. If there's a single person in this room who hasn't seen that through George Floyd and COVID and the Ukraine war, raise your hand. Oh, nobody? Right, you all know what I'm talking about. And you're so disappointed in people. You are, and you realize that the herd instinct is maybe the strongest instinct. I mean, it may be stronger than the hunger and sex instincts, actually. The instinct, which again is inherent to be like everybody else and not to be cast out of the group, not to be shunned, that's a very strong impulse in all of us from birth. And it takes over, unfortunately, in moments like this, and it's harnessed, in fact, by bad people in moments like this to produce uniformity. And you see people going along with this and you lose respect for them. And that's certainly happened to me at scale over the past 3 years. I'm not mad at people, I'm just sad, I'm disappointed. How could you go along with this? You know it's not true, but you're saying it anyway? Really? You're putting your pronouns in your email? You're ridiculous.
In other words, I'm trying to process that the only reason half the people in the world watch Fox News is because of Tucker Carlson. So why would they do a thing like that?
Over the last year or two, Rupert Murdoch, who owns Fox News and controls it, locks the body and soul, has been trying to move to the left and to move away from being a straight conservative network. And most particularly, they've been trying to stop Donald Trump from becoming president. Murdoch doesn't exist in journalism because he wants a Pulitzer. He exists because he wants political power, and he sees owning a network as being a route to it. And he supported Trump vigorously in 2016, after originally opposing him, and in 2020. But in the interim, during Trump's presidency, he wouldn't give Murdoch the right time of day. Murdoch wanted to control Trump. Murdoch wanted to be president. And going back to the tradition of Joseph Pulitzer and William Randolph Hearst, he wanted to be a political boss dressed up as a media person.
Right.
And Trump wasn't playing ball. Trump doesn't do that with anybody. And increasingly, Murdoch got alienated from Trump. And when Trump ran again this time, Murdoch announced that he would oppose Trump.
You mean when Trump announced at Mar-a-Lago that he is running for the presidency in 2024, Murdoch pretty quickly made it clear, or did he make it explicit that he
made it very clear.
He made it clear.
And his organs, the New York Post, Wall Street Journal, and Fox News, all shifted on a dime.
But no one else thinks it's ridiculous. Oh no, it's your pronouns in the email. What does that even mean? What does it even mean? You're saying things you can't define. LBGTQIA+? Who's the plus? The plus is invited to my show anytime. Find a plus and I'll interview him. What's it like to be a plus? Am I a plus? I'm serious. I feel like I'm an addition. Does that make me a plus? No one even knows what it is. And the whole society, LGBTQIA+. All right, what's the plus? Oh, shut up, racist. Okay. So you reach that place and you feel, and this is one of the reasons, Father Scalia, I was actually overcome a little bit with emotion as you prayed, because I realized that I was so upset by the behavior of some people I love, frankly, in a country I revere and always have, that I wasn't praying for the country. That's on me, and we all should be. But back to my point. So you see the sadness happening. But there is, as there always is, this is a fact of nature and theology and of observable reality, there is a countervailing force at work always. There's a counterbalance to the badness. It's called goodness. And you see it in people. So for every 10 people who are putting he and him in their electronic JP Morgan email signatures, there's one person who's like, no, I'm not doing that.
This just in to CNN. Tucker Carlson is out at Fox News. The right-wing network just announced the two have parted ways. CNN senior media reporter Oliver Darcy is here with more on this. What are you learning? He was out on Friday. Will we see him say goodbye?
We're not going to see him say goodbye. This is really stunning news coming from Fox. They say his last show was April 21st. They put out a very short statement. They say they thank him for his service, and that's it. That's all we know right now. But of course, this comes days after. Last week, you remember, Fox News settled this massive defamation lawsuit with Dominion Voting Systems over the election lies that it promoted in the wake of the 2020 election. So they paid out $787 million, the highest known defamation settlement ever publicly known in U.S. media. So this is coming days after that. Unclear, of course, whether this is related. It's kind of hard to imagine that these things happen. Tucker Carlson was sowing doubt about the U.S. election results.
I want to fight, but I'm not doing that. It's a betrayal of what I think is true. It's a betrayal of my conscience, of my faith, of my sense of myself, of my dignity as a human being, of my autonomy. I am not a slave. I am a free citizen, and I'm not doing that. And there's nothing you can do to me to make me do it. And I hope it won't come to that. But if it does come to that, here I am. Here I am. It's Paul on trial. Here I am. And you see that in people, and it's a completely unexpected assortment of people. I'm really interested in cause and effect, and as I noted at the outset of my remarks, and my ability to predict the future. Working on that. But because I'm sort of paid to predict things, I try and think a lot about, what connects certain outcomes that I should have seen before they occurred. And in this case, there is no thread that I can find that connects all of the people who've popped up in my life to be that lone brave person in the crowd who says no thank you. You could not have known who these people are. They don't fit a common profile. Some are people like me. Some of them don't look like me at all. Some of them are people I despised on political grounds just a few years ago. I could name their names, but you may not even know about their transformations, and I don't want to wreck your dinner by telling you who they are. But there's in one case someone who I made fun of on television, and certainly in my private life in vulgar ways, who was really the embodiment of everything I found repulsive, who in the middle of COVID decided, no, I'm not going along with this. And once you say one true thing and stick with it, all kinds of other true things occur to you. The truth is contagious. Lying is, but the truth is as well. And the second you decide to tell the truth about something, you are filled with this, I don't want to get supernatural on you, but you are filled with this power from somewhere else. Try it. Tell the truth about something. You feel it every day. The more you tell the truth, the stronger you become. And of course, the opposite is also true. The more you lie, the weaker and more terrified you become. We all know that feeling. You lie about something, and all of a sudden you're a prisoner of that lie. You are diminished by it. You are weak and afraid. Drug and alcohol use is the same way. It makes you weak and afraid. But you look around and you see these people, and some of them really have paid a heavy price for telling the truth. And they are cast out of their groups, whatever those groups are, but they do it anyway. And I look on at those people with the deepest possible admiration. I am paid to do that. I face no penalty. Someone came up to me, you're so brave. Really? I'm a talk show host. It's like I can have any opinion I want. That's my job. That's why they pay me. It's not brave to tell the truth on a cable news show. And if you're not doing that, you're really an idiot. You're really craven. You're lying on television? Why would you do that? You're literally making a living to say what you think, and you can't even do that? Please. But how about if you're a senior vice president at Citibank? I'm serious. At Citibank. And you're making, $4 million a year. And you've got 3 kids in Bedford, and 2 are in boarding school, and 1 starting at Wesleyan next year. And you need this job, honestly. And your whole sector is kind of collapsing, and you know that. You just go into little re-education meetings, and you're like, yeah, diversity is our strength. That's exactly right. We need equity in the capital markets. Okay, all right. So if you're the one guy who refuses to say that, you are a hero, in my opinion. And I know some of them. In fact, my job is to interview them. And I sit back and I look at these people, and I give them more credit than I do people who display physical courage, which is often impulsive, by the way. And I'm not denigrating physical courage, which I deeply admire, but you interview people who do amazing things, who rush into the proverbial burning building. And every man is kind of trained from birth to fantasize about what he would do when the building catches fire and you hear a baby crying, and so you run inside. No one is trained to stand up in the middle of a DEI meeting at Citibank and say, this is nonsense. And the people who do that, they have my deepest admiration. And so their example really gives me hope. It thrills me. I talk to them all day long, people like that. That's the first thing. We should, in this sad moment of profound and widespread destruction of the institutions that people who share our views built, by the way, earlier generations that would agree substantially with every person in this room, they built those and now they're being destroyed. And that's so depressing. But we can also see rising in the distance new things, new institutions led by new people who are every bit as brave as the people who came before us. Amen. But the objective is the same. And so we write our papers and they write their papers and may the best papers win. I don't think that's what we're watching now at all. I don't think we're watching a debate over how to get to the best outcome. I think that's completely wrong. And I've come to this conclusion, and I should say at the outset I'm an Episcopalian, so don't take any theological advice from me because I don't have any. I grew up in the shallowest faith tradition that's ever been invented. It's not even a Christian religion at this point, I say with shame. But I'm just saying this as an observer of what's going on. There is no way to assess, say, the transgenderist movement with that mindset. Policy papers don't account for it at all. If you have people who are saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation. Let's sexually mutilate children. I'm sorry, that's not a political debate. What? It has nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational. If you say, well, I think abortion is always bad, well, I think sometimes it's necessary, that's a debate I'm familiar with. But if you're telling me that abortion is a positive good, what are you saying? Well, you're arguing for child sacrifice, obviously. It's not about a teen girl gets pregnant and what do we do about that and victims of rape. I get it. Of course I understand that and I have compassion for everyone involved. But when the Treasury Secretary stands up and says, you know what you can do to help the economy? Get an abortion. Well, that's like an Aztec principle, actually. What's the point of child sacrifice? Well, there's no policy goal entwined with that. No, that's a theological phenomenon. And that's kind of the point I'm making. None of this makes sense in conventional political terms. When people or crowds of people, or the largest crowd of people at all, which is the federal government, the largest human organization in human history, decide that the goal is to destroy things, destruction for its own sake. Hey, let's tear it down. What you're watching is not a political movement, it's evil. So if you want to assess, and I'll put it in and I'll stop with this. I'll put it in non-political, or non-specific theological terms, and just say, if you want to know what's evil and what's good, what are the characteristics of those? And by the way, I think the Athenians would have agreed with this. This is not necessarily just a Christian notion. This is kind of a widely agreed upon understanding of good and evil. What are its products? What do these two conditions produce? Well, good is characterized by order, calmness, tranquility, peace, whatever you want to call it, lack of conflict, cleanliness. Cleanliness is next to godliness. It's true, it is. And evil is characterized by their opposites: violence, hate, disorder, division, disorganization, and filth. I'm just noting what's super obvious. Like, those of us who are in our mid-50s are caught in the past in the way that we think about this. One side's like, no, I've got this idea, and we've got this idea, and let's have a debate about our ideas. They don't want a debate. Those ideas won't produce outcomes that any rational person would want under any circumstances. Those are manifestations of some larger force acting upon us. It's just so obvious. It's completely obvious. And I think two things. One, we should say that and stop engaging in these totally fraudulent debates where we are using the terms that we used in 1991 when I started at Heritage, as if maybe, you know, I could just win the debate if I marshaled more facts. I've tried that, doesn't work. And two, maybe we should all take just like 10 minutes a day to say a prayer about it. I'm serious, like why not? And I'm saying that to you, not as some kind of evangelist, I'm literally saying that to you as an Episcopalian. The Samaritans of our time. I'm coming to you from the most humble and lowly theological position you can. I'm literally an Episcopalian, okay? And even I have concluded it might be worth taking just 10 minutes out of your busy schedule to say a prayer for the future.